This was filed about 5 years ago. A missing persons report for a woman named Laura Grant. No mention of a child. Laura flipped through the pages. Photographs, statements. But then the file abruptly ended. It looks like the investigation died here, she said, frowning. No leads. Witness statements were scarce. The husband, our Mr. Harrison Grant, didn't file the report himself. It was filed by a neighbor. Harrison's face turned pale. A neighbor? Which one? Laura pointed to a name. Charles Whitman. She sketched out an address. We should visit him. They left the station and drove to the neighbor's house. Charles Whitman was an elderly man with a cane and a gnarled face. When Laura identified herself, he invited them inside. He sat in a sagging armchair, wringing his hands. I remember that night, he said. Laura came running over, her eyes wide with fear. She was holding the boy. Thomas, I later found out. She was saying something about leaving clues about keeping him safe. Then she was gone. I tried to follow her, but she disappeared down an alley. Laura leaned forward. Did you see anyone else that night? A man? Or hear anything unusual? Charles nodded. There was a black SUV parked down the street. I thought it odd because it was past midnight. I saw a man, I think he had a scar on his face, getting out of the driver's side. He looked around like he was searching for something. I couldn't see his face clearly, but he looked dangerous. Harrison exchanged a glance with Laura. He had a tattoo, Thomas said. Charles nodded. Perhaps. I couldn't see that detail, but I remember him wearing a dark leather jacket, jeans. He was tall, broad shoulders. He looked like someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. Laura jotted down information. Thank you, Mr. Whitman, this helps. They returned to the car, and Harrison exhaled deeply. So these people have been hiding in plain sight. They've been close all along. Laura looked determined. We'll keep digging. Now we need to find out who owns. Not owns, but who controls that SUV and who pulled the strings. It might be a larger operation. Harrison nodded. I'll have my private investigators start tracing SUVs in the area for that time period. Thomas, who had listened quietly, spoke up. What about my mom? Will we find out what happened to her? Laura placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We'll do everything we can to find answers, Thomas. I promise. As the afternoon sun dipped low, they returned to the guest house. Harrison made a quick dinner, and they sat around a small table, the three of them united in purpose. Thomas ate slowly, his eyes flicking between Harrison and Laura. Harrison watched him, pride swelling in his chest. Despite everything Thomas had endured, he was brave, resilient, a survivor. After dinner, Laura pulled out her laptop. I've got some connections at the district attorney's office. I can request surveillance footage from nearby traffic cameras around the time of the abduction. Even though it's 5 years ago, some cameras save archives. We might find the SUV's license plate. Harrison nodded. That would be invaluable. They worked late into the night, cross-referencing names, addresses, and vehicle registrations. Thomas fell asleep on the couch with a blanket wrapped around him. Harrison considered going to bed but stayed by Laura's side. He felt a sense of purpose he had never known since losing his memory. He was fighting for his family, for justice. For the first time in years, he felt whole. The next morning, they received good news. Laura had obtained partial footage from a traffic camera at a nearby intersection. They rushed to her car to view it. It was grainy, dated, but there it was. A black SUV pulling into view, its headlights cutting through the night. The timestamp matched the night Laura Grant had disappeared. The SUV's license plate was partially obscured, but they could make out enough characters to get a lead. Harrison felt hope surge through him. This is it, he whispered. We can track them now. Laura nodded. I'll coordinate with tech to clear the image and run it through a database. As they left the police station, Harrison draped an arm around Thomas. The boy looked up at him, eyes shining. Do you think we'll find her? Harrison squeezed his shoulder. Yes, we will. Over the next few days, Harrison, Laura, and Thomas worked tirelessly. They followed every lead, piecing together the puzzle like skilled artisans. The partial license plate led them to a registered owner, a shell company headed by a man named Victor Delgado. Delgado was known in underground circles as a fixer, a.e., man who handled dirty work for powerful clients. Harrison's mind reeled. Could Delgado be the one behind the plot that destroyed his family? He shared the information with Laura and Thomas as they sat in the guest house living room. Victor Delgado, Harrison said. He's been linked to multiple illegal operations, extortion, kidnapping, even murder for hire. If he's involved, we're dealing with dangerous people. Laura frowned. We need to approach this cautiously. Delgado won't hesitate to hurt us to protect himself. Thomas's face hardened. I don't care. I want answers. I want to know what happened to Mom. Harrison nodded. He stood, walking to the bookshelf where he kept some of his old case files, investments he had acquired, notable deals. He rifled through them until he found a worn folder. Inside was an address, a dilapidated warehouse on the outskirts of town. It was owned by one of Delgado's associates years ago. Could this be where Laura Grant was taken? Could it still hold clues? He handed the file to Laura. I think this is where we should start. We need to get inside. Search for evidence. Laura studied the file. It's risky. We'll need backup. I'll coordinate with a tactical unit. Thomas watched, anxiety and determination swirling in his young face. Can I come? He asked softly. Harrison knelt to his level. You deserve to know what happened to your mother, but this could be dangerous. Are you sure you want to come? Thomas nodded without hesitation. Yes, I want to see for myself. Harrison exchanged a look with Laura. She sighed and nodded. We'll bring you along, but you stay close to me. On a gray morning, they approached the warehouse. It was a hulking building with boarded-up windows and rusted doors. Laura parked the unmarked sedan a block away. Harrison and Thomas followed her, moving quietly through overgrown weeds. As they neared the entrance, they saw armed officers taking positions. The tension was palpable. Laura gestured for them to wait behind a stack of wooden pallets. She spoke into her radio. Alpha Team, move in. I'm here with hostages. 2 adults and 1 child. Repeat, potential hostages. Harrison's heart pounded. He exchanged a worried glance with Thomas. They both knew what this meant. Delgado had taken captives, possibly using them as leverage. The thought of his son in danger made cold sweat bead on Harrison's forehead. Suddenly, the front doors creaked open. A tall figure emerged, flanked by 2 other men. The tall figure had a scar running down his left cheek and a snake tattoo partially visible beneath his rolled-up sleeve. Harrison's blood ran cold. The memory rushed back. The man who stole Thomas's mother. The man who had terrified them both. It was the same scarred man. Thomas gasped, his hand instinctively reaching for Harrison's. Laura, recognizing the danger, barked orders into her radio. The officers tensed. The scarred man's gaze swept over them and recognition flickered in his eyes. Grant, he snarled. I should have known. Harrison stepped forward, anger and fear warring within him. What have you done with her? He demanded. The man sneered. Your wife? She's gone. No one knows where she is. But if you step any closer, I'll take down the kid and his sugar daddy right now. Thomas's eyes filled with tears. Harrison's heart shattered seeing his son's distress. He turned to Laura. Get him out of here, he whispered. Laura nodded and pulled Thomas back behind cover. She motioned to officers who moved swiftly to escort Thomas to safety. Harrison remained behind the pallets, his palms clenched into fists. The scarred man's voice was cold. You bought this house, thinking you could reopen old wounds. Now you've brought your son into this mess. Smart move. Harrison's jaw tightened. Let him go. I'll do whatever you want. His voice was low but resolute. The man laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Not so fast. I want you to watch, while I dispose of a little souvenir of yours. He nodded to one of his men, who dragged a bundle wrapped in cloth into view. The bundle, lying motionless on the dusty floor, looked like a body. Harrison's breath caught. Could it be Laura Grant? The cloth was thrown back. Harrison's heart felt like it stopped. Blood drained from his face as he sank to his knees. There she was, Laura, his wife. Her eyes closed, a thin trail of blood from a wound on her temple. She looked so peaceful, yet so lifeless. Harrison's scream echoed through the warehouse. He scrambled forward, reaching out to touch her, but the scars on his arm pressed against the rough wood pallet behind him. The pain was excruciating, but he ignored it, focusing on the woman he loved. He cradled her head in his arms, tears streaming down his face. The scarred man smirked. "Do you recognize her now, Grant? I sent her to the morgue years ago. You never bothered to look. You lost your memory. They told you she walked away. But she was right here." Harrison's world shattered. "Why?" he choked out. The man shrugged. "Orders. She found out about our plans. A financial scheme involving the property. She threatened to ruin us. So we got rid of her. And the boy was just collateral. The house was always the prize. Now you both know too much. You're both liabilities." Harrison pressed his cheek to Laura's cold forehead, feeling her hair, once so soft, now stiff. "Please," he whispered. "Please don't let this be the end." But the scarred man's face was hard. "This is the end for her. As for you, Grant, let's see how much you're willing to sacrifice for this." He gestured to the second man who advanced on Harrison, a gleaming knife in his hand. Suddenly, a hail of bullets cracked through the air. Officers burst into the warehouse, guns drawn. The knife-wielding man froze, confusion on his face, before dropping to the ground as 2 bullets struck him square in the chest. The scarred man, startled, turned to run, but a bullet caught him in the leg. He staggered, but he still held his gun, firing wildly. Laura, still slumped, was carefully lifted by paramedics who had entered behind the officers. Thomas, safe in a corner with a detective, screamed his mother's name as he watched her crumple into the stretcher. Harrison rose unsteadily, anguish giving him strength. He grabbed the scarred man by his jacket, pulling him close. "Where is she?" he snarled, tears blurring his vision. The man stammered, blood oozing from his wound. "You can't save her. She's—" He coughed, blood flecking his lips. "At the old mill, 3rd floor, behind the crates." Harrison shook him. "Where is she now? Alive?" The man's eyes rolled back, and he went limp. Harrison dropped him, adrenaline surging. Officers handcuffed the man and rushed to secure the area. Harrison ran to the paramedics. Laura's eyes fluttered open, her eyelids heavy. She gave a weak smile when she saw him. His heart leaped. "Harrison," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You found me." He knelt beside her, cradling her hand. "It's going to be all right," he promised, though fear gnawed at his insides. She closed her eyes, and her grip on his hand slackened. Nearby, Thomas watched with wide eyes, horror etched on his young face. Laura's body was lifted into an ambulance. Harrison climbed in beside her as the paramedics worked to stabilize her. Thomas and Laura Fields followed close behind. Hours later, at the hospital, Harrison sat in a waiting area, his suit stained with his wife's blood. Thomas sat beside him, clutching his hand. Laura Fields paced back and forth, her face grave. Finally, a doctor emerged. "She's stable but unconscious," he said. "The wound wasn't fatal, but she did suffer head trauma. We'll keep her in intensive care, overnight for observation. She'll need surgery to relieve pressure on her brain, but she's a strong woman. She has a fighting chance." Harrison exhaled, a tremor in his shoulders. He turned to Thomas, who looked at him with hopeful eyes. "Mom will be okay?" the boy whispered. Harrison nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Yes, she will be okay." Laura was whisked off for surgery. Harrison and Thomas walked through the hospital corridors in stunned silence. Finally, Thomas spoke. "Dad, I'm sorry I made you bring me. Harrison knelt and pulled him into a tight embrace. "No, Thomas, you were right. I needed to know what happened to her. You're my son and I love you more than anything." Thomas buried his face in Harrison's chest. releasing sobs he had held back for so long. The next morning, Harrison sat by Laura's bedside. Her head was bandaged, tubes running into her arms, but she opened her eyes at his touch. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You're safe now," he whispered. She smiled weakly. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she said. Her voice was hoarse but filled with warmth. Thomas peeked through the curtain, his face lighting up, at the sight of his mother awake. "Mom!" he exclaimed, rushing to the bed. Laura opened her arms and Thomas slipped inside, his small body trembling as he hugged her. The reunion was a balm to Harrison's soul. Seeing Laura alive, seeing their son safe. It was more than he had dared to hope for. Laura reached out, placing a hand on Harrison's cheek. "We have a lot to rebuild," she whispered. Harrison nodded, looking at their son. "We'll do it together." Months passed as Laura recovered. The investigation led by Laura Fields resulted in Delgado's capture and the exposure of a criminal network that had entangled their family for years. The mansion was seized by authorities, and Harrison reclaimed it, not as a prize, but as a home for his reunited family. Thomas enrolled in school, his nights haunted by memories but comforted by the love and security of his parents. Harrison closed down some of his business ventures, choosing to focus on family and philanthropy. He established a foundation in honor of Laura Grant, dedicated to helping missing children and families torn apart by crime. On a bright spring morning, the gates of the mansion opened to welcome a grand celebration. Friends, family, and benefactors gathered on the lawn adorned with blooming roses and wreaths of white. Harrison stood beside Laura, who held Thomas's hand. Tears of joy glistened in their eyes as they watched as children from various backgrounds played together in the gardens. Children, whom the foundation had helped rescue from situations similar to Thomas's. Harrison raised a glass of champagne, his heart full. "To new beginnings," he said. "To family, to love that prevails." Laura smiled, her hand on Thomas's shoulder. "To hope," she added. Thomas looked up at his parents, his face radiant. "To us," he whispered. As the sun bathed them in warm light, Harrison Grant realized that true wealth was not in mansions or millions, but in the bonds of family, in love that endures, and in the promise of a safer tomorrow for all children. And as they laughed together, the memories of darkness faded, replaced by a future filled with light, hope, and the unbreakable strength of their bond. In the weeks following Laura's surgery, Harrison and Thomas witnessed her gradual recovery with gratitude. Each morning, Laura sat up in bed, determination shining. Physical therapy was rigorous. Harrison accompanied her, offering encouragement as she practiced walking. When she tied her shoes without assistance, tears of joy filled Harrison's eyes. At night, they gathered in the guest house where Laura shared small achievements, brushing her hair, speaking without pause. Thomas listened intently, perched on the sofa. Harrison admired his wife's resilience, recalling nights when he feared her injuries were permanent. Now, hope thrived. Thomas pursued his healing. His nightmares became less frequent with each therapy session. Twice a week, he met with a counselor specializing in childhood trauma. Through art, Thomas painted scenes of darkness transforming into light. His memories on canvas helped him process pain. He also found solace in playing soccer with classmates, the freedom of sprinting offering a sense of normalcy. School provided structure. Reading aloud was daunting, his voice trembled. But when his teacher praised an essay on courage, Thomas felt a surge of confidence. He began volunteering to read more, his voice growing stronger. Harrison watched with pride as his son's transformation unfolded. Meanwhile, the mansion underwent a metamorphosis. Harrison collaborated with architects to repurpose rooms. The nursery, once a place of solitude, became an office for the Grant Family Foundation's case managers. White walls displayed photographs of reunited families, a testament to hope. The grand foyer became an art gallery with portraits of missing children painted by local artists, each frame telling a story. The library transformed into a resource center. Rows of binders detailing missing persons lined shelves. Counselors and investigators gathered at tables, laptops open, collaborating on strategies. The dining hall became a conference room for training sessions. A large screen displayed case statistics: children found, families reunited, new leads uncovered. Outside, the overgrown gardens were tamed. Pathways of cobblestone guided visitors through tulips and daisies. A memorial park emerged near the fountain. Engraved plaques bore names of missing individuals, providing a place for families to reflect. Each evening, candles lit along the paths symbolized unwavering hope. The foundation's first success came when a family in another state reunited with their child after a DNA match. Parents, separated for years, embraced in tears. Thomas, witnessing the reunion, felt a swell of purpose. His story, too, could help others. He shared his experiences at local schools, speaking about perseverance. Harrison expanded the foundation's reach, funding workshops nationwide to train law enforcement. Laura traveled with him, sharing her survivor story at conferences. Her honesty inspired efforts to locate missing persons. Families once resigned to despair found renewed determination, motivated by Laura's resilience. As autumn arrived, the foundation's impact deepened. New cases were logged daily. Staff members hunted through old records, breathing life into cold cases. Families once trapped in uncertainty now had a lifeline. The mansion buzzed with activity, a place where despair met action and hope prevailed. One evening, Harrison walked through the gardens with Laura and Thomas. The sun cast a golden hue as koi swam in the fountain. Thomas dropped a pebble into the water, watching ripples expand, a reminder that small actions create vast change. Laura placed a hand on Harrison's arm. "We've built something meaningful," she said. Harrison smiled. "We did it together." Thomas grinned. "It feels like magic." Harrison chuckled. "It's our magic. Love, hope, and perseverance." They stood as dusk settled, understanding that every challenge led them here, to a place of healing and purpose. Though their journey continued, Harrison knew that with his wife and son, they could overcome any darkness. Under the starlit sky, the Grant family, once lost and broken, stood firmly together, ready to embrace the future.